One of the areas of NLP that I've always been most interested in is the whole area about language, about how we use words, about the impact that words have on other people, and how you influence the way that somebody is thinking, feeling, or indeed what they're going to do just by using words. And people sometimes say to me, well, I'm a good communicator. Why do I need to learn more about language? And, you're not talking about foreign languages, are you? So I thought today I'd give you a little bit of a taste of some of the ways that we look at language. This is a kind of simple starting place because I'm only going to look at individual words rather than the impact of different words strung together and certain constructions of sentences and so on. And you probably think you're a good communicator. Most of us do. Most of us don't feel that we are not expressing ourselves very well. But the thing about communication is that it's a two-way street. And so having an understanding about the effect it has on somebody else's thought process when you choose one word rather than another, I think can really make a difference to how easily you get across the point that you really want to make. So what I'm going to share with you today are 6 words that are in common usage. We call them the 6 deadly words because they can have such a profound impact on a message, on a sentence, on a whole communication. And it's okay to use these words, just that if you really understand the impact of each of these words, it'll make a difference to your overall communication. So here are the 6 deadly words. First up is the word but. Now, if you were to just stop and listen in a meeting for a few moments, you would probably hear the word but used repeatedly. And one of the reasons for that is that people use it as a means of disagreeing, or they use it as a bit of a softener, because what happens when you use but is that everything that went before it is negated. Or, if you'll excuse the language, a friend of mine said, everything before the but is bullshit. So think about it. If I say to you, I really like the work you did on that project, but what are you expecting to come next? You're expecting criticism, aren't you? You know that the thing that comes after the but is going to be something you didn't want to hear. And so the fact that I've said I liked something or you did a good job, it just disappears. Now, some people think that they're kind of buying the right to give you some critical feedback if they give you something positive. Unfortunately, as soon as you say but, whatever came before that disappears from the mind of the person listening. Now, some people say replace that with and. So if I replaced but with and I said, I really like the work that you did on that project, and you didn't do a very good job of managing the budget. That doesn't really sound right, does it? So in fact, the best thing to do to get your point across effectively is to split those two things up and do them as separate sentences, maybe even completely separate conversations. So you talk about what did the person do well, what did you like about what they did on that project? And then separately you come to, okay, now let's talk about the budget, because I don't think you got that quite right. Or you might say something a little more direct than that. You get the idea. So the word but is the first of the deadly words, and it's one to really pay attention to. As I said, everything that goes before the but disappears. And sometimes people use this in a meeting. So one person will put forward an idea or make a point about the subject under discussion, and the second person will say, but, and then come up with their point. And they're perhaps not consciously aware that by doing that, they're negating everything the other person said. That's the result of it, though. So there's one for you to think about. How do you use but? When do you use it? When should you not use it? Have a think. The second of the deadly words is the word why. Now, if I said to you, why are you wearing those shoes? What would your reaction be? Well, you might look at your shoes, but you'd probably think, are you suggesting I shouldn't be? Because when you ask a why question, there is the danger that it puts people slightly on the defensive. It's as if you're questioning their judgment. Now, there is a bit of a cultural thing here that the British English use of why often is aimed at what caused you to do whatever you did. Whereas the other side of the Atlantic, the American use of why is often more understood as for what purpose. And of course, we get that in French and we get it in Italian as well. Pourquoi, perché, that's for what purpose. So there is a cultural difference here. Just, listen out for the way that it's being used in a conversation that you're in. So rather than ask a why question, sometimes it's better and less likely to put people on the defensive if you use a question that starts with how or what. So if I'm asking, why are you wearing those shoes? Well, why would I be asking that? Maybe because they're unusual or they're a bright colour or something. Yeah. Then if I'm really curious, then I might ask, so what was it that drew you to those shoes? Or, how did you decide to buy and wear really bright coloured shoes? Or something a little more interested in the thought process rather than challenging of the thought process. So why is a deadly word. And of course, in all of these, there's something about the tone of voice as well, because if I go, so why did you do that? It really does sound as if I'm questioning your judgment. But if I was to say it in a softer way and say, why did you do that? Then I might get a slightly different response. So that's your second deadly word. The third one is can't. Now, when someone says they can't do something, it's kind of ambiguous. See, the problem with can't is there's lots of different sorts of can't. If you say to somebody, can you come to a meeting next Wednesday? And they go, no, sorry, I can't. Then that could mean I can't because I've got something else to do. Or it could be I can't because I'm out of the country. Or it could be I can't physically get there. Or there could be lots of different reasons for it. And sometimes people use can't when they really mean won't. As in somebody says, can you babysit for me next Saturday? And you go, I'd love to, but I can't. Actually, that probably means I wouldn't love to, and there's something else I'd rather be doing. But they say can't because it sounds better than won't. Sometimes people say I can't, and it's just I physically do not know how to do that. So, if somebody asked me to, service their car, no, I can't. I don't know how to do that. Yeah. So that's a different kind of can't. I don't have the skill to do it. So when somebody says can't to me, then I hear that as kind of a red flag that there's a bit more conversation to be had. That if I dig a little bit deeper and understand what's stopping the person from doing what I've asked them, then we can have a very different sort of conversation. So the different sorts of can't. It's either I could, but I don't want to. It's either it's physically impossible, or it could be I just don't have the skills or knowledge to be able to do the thing that's being talked about. So that's when you're hearing it from other people. Now, on the other side, my rule of thumb would be, rather than tell people what you can't do, tell them what you can do. So if somebody says to you, can you get that done for me by next Friday? And you say, no, sorry, I can't. That doesn't give as good an impression of you as if somebody says, can you do that by next Friday? And you say, I can get half of it done by Friday and the rest of it would have to wait till Tuesday. Is that okay? That makes you sound much more like you know what you're doing, you're more professional, more willing to help, and so on. So I would say avoid using can't when you're talking to other people. Tell them what you can do rather than what you can't do. So that's 3. The fourth one is try. You probably know what the problem is with try. Try brings with it all sorts of connotations about not expecting to succeed. If you're a fan of the Star Wars movies, you might remember that wonderful quote from Yoda where he says to Luke Skywalker, do it or do not. There is no try. I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind. So I hear this a lot in people talking about what their goals are, what their plans are. Oh, I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to try and do that. It doesn't sound anywhere near as positive as saying it's my aim to do this, or I'm going to do this, or I'm planning to do this. So if you can edit that out of your own communication, it will give a much more professional and positive impression of you to other people around you. And when you hear it from other people, when somebody says, I'm going to try, again, I treat that as a bit of a red flag. So if somebody says to me, I'm going to try and do that, then I would probably go back and investigate a bit more and saying, you're going to try. It doesn't really sound as if you're all that convinced that you can. So what do we need to change so that you are certain that you can deliver on this? So that's try. The fifth one is don't. Now, the problem with don't is that it disappears. So if I say to you, right now, this minute, don't think about a blue tree, what comes to mind? Yes, the blue tree that I asked you not to think about. And the reason for that is that at a very simple level, when you hear the words, it's not easy to make a picture in your mind's eye of not a blue tree, but it's very easy to make a picture in your mind's eye of a blue tree. So at the unconscious level, our minds generally take the path of least resistance, and so they will do whatever you've said, regardless of whether you said do it or don't do it. And this is a great one if you have small children. If you can cultivate the habit of telling your children what to do rather than what not to do, you make life a lot easier for all of you. You know, if you hand a child a drink and say, don't drop that, what are they now thinking? They're now thinking about dropping splat, juice all over the kitchen floor. So have a think about this, that if you edited the word don't out of your communication and focused on what you want people to do instead of what you don't want them to do, you might find, first of all, it's a bit of a challenge because a lot of us have grown up with don't, and hence we reproduce it ourselves. It's a bit of a challenge. And at the same time, it's really worthwhile doing because it brings a clarity to your communication that can be completely lost if all you're focusing on is what you don't want people to do. So that's number 5. And the final deadly word is the word should. And the reason why this is a deadly word is because, again, it's ambiguous. Some people, when you say you should do that, will hear it as an imperative, that there is no choice. Other people, interestingly, will hear it as you should do that, but you don't have to. So they'll hear that there is a choice. And you can't always tell which way somebody's going to take it. So I would say, easier to just not use the word and express yourself in a different way. So if there genuinely is a choice, then suggest to somebody you could do that. And if there isn't a choice, then put it in a completely different way. This is the rule, this is the system, this is the way it has to be done. And then the other thing about should is some people do it to themselves a lot. So a lot of us have that kind of, I should empty my filing. I should clean out the garage. I should clear up the spare bedroom. I should do my tax return, etc., etc. So a couple of things there. One is, if you catch yourself doing it, ask yourself, if I did this, what would be the benefit? So if I did clean out the garage, what would be the benefit? If I did do my filing, what would be the benefit? If I did do my tax return, how would that help? If you can't think of a benefit of doing it, it's possible that should has come from someone else and isn't really coming from inside your own thought process. Sometimes, though, of course, you'll realise that there is a huge benefit to doing it. So then perhaps you could stop telling yourself, I should do that, and start telling yourself, I want to do it, because sometimes it's just that we've lost sight of the bigger picture, got focused in on a slightly uninteresting task, and that's where we can kind of get into, I should do that, rather than I want to do it because it's going to help me achieve something important. So, those are the 6 deadly words. But, why, can't, try, don't, and should. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should immediately stop using them. All I'm suggesting is that you become a little bit more aware of the impact that they have. And on occasions when you have the opportunity to stop and think about how you're expressing yourself, pay attention to how you're using some of those words and see whether or not you think they're really supporting you in achieving the message that you want to put across. Food for thought, hey? Have fun with those.